So I'm Anthony. I'm looking after a lot of the work that we're doing with labs, and this is going to be the first time that we've actually talked about this with anybody so far. So there's two real things that I want from everyone today, and hopefully you guys are going to give us some feedback on what we're doing here and how we're creating this value and how you see this working. But secondly, I want to talk you through the very first labs product as well, and you guys will see some of the vision and what we've aimed to achieve with this. So as you guys know already, I think most of you know YLD, but we've always sort of followed this model of innovation at your core together. You know, we've moved away from the sort of hugely, a lot of companies are moving away from this very verticalized perspective on technology into a more modern perspective on how you combine teams into create something that's really valuable. Like with Facebook, they focus on metrics. They let anybody pick up their core actual repo, make a change, test it with a whole bunch of people, and very rapidly iterate on the product to find something that is successful. You know, we've always been strong proponents of building, of helping companies move to this sort of culture of learning, away from this kind of culture of delivery through design and engineering. And we've never really taken the opportunity to maximize that opportunity for ourselves. So over the last, over the last few years, we've catalyzed millions of investment and exits from the startups that we've worked with. One of the guys we worked with even won an OBE for the opportunity to work with him. And of course, there's us still doing this in a service model architecture, right? So there must be an opportunity for us to build some more value for, you know, to share in some of that value that we're creating. So this is what we're trying to do with YLD Labs. It's a really exciting space, and I'm going to talk through kind of what we're aiming to achieve in a bit more detail later on, but there's two major goals. The first one being to invest in great entrepreneurs with all the strength of YLD. So I mean that from the perspective of not just us utilizing our ability in software, our ability in product, and our ability in design, but actually the great finance team that we've built, the great HR function that we've built in terms of being able to hire people, and use that to help accelerate great entrepreneurs as well. So, why do we want to do this? Like, why does this even make sense? Well, we want to build a more scalable revenue opportunity. Like, for us, we are limited by the ability to have people doing a certain amount of work, and that's how we drive our business. So the ability to move into something that lets us scale at the scale of software is hugely valuable for us to do that. It gives us exposure to other markets outside of the technology industry. For us, it's an opportunity to drive something that's longer term. It's higher risk, but there's potentially higher reward there. And to be honest, it helps us practice what we preach. We've created all of this value with all of these great companies. How can we do this as a partnership rather than just necessarily a client relationship? So that's part number one. The second major goal that we have is to define a simple, repeatable process for investment and growth. And I want to give you guys a little bit of a snippet of some of the stuff that we've learned here, because I think it's quite valuable. There's some, Nuno's done a huge amount of work here actually, so if you guys later want to talk to somebody in the audience who really does know this well, Nuno Camposh in the middle has helped me massively in building all of this. So, what do we look for in a team? Well, we obviously want to make sure that the individual that we're bringing through this investment process, this great entrepreneur, has a good team dynamic if there's more than one person. If not, we need to provide them with that ability to build that great team dynamic. The individual that we're looking for should have an unreasonable interest or knowledge in that space that we're looking to create that particular product in. And they have to be an entrepreneur. So one of the things we look for is previous success in that space. So can we enable this person to build a successful product there? It's pretty simple. What do we look for in terms of an opportunity? Well, we look for large growing markets or opportunity to expand an existing market to existing non-consumers. So these are sort of the rules we follow when we look whether we're going to try and make an investment into something. We want to make sure that we can create a 10 times improvement in some dimension of the product, whether that's going to be through user experience or cost, or it has to be fundamentally a 10 times improvement because we know that's what's going to create that value. It should be a painkiller. Which means that effectively that is, rather than a vitamin, so people will buy painkillers because you're at the point where you're experiencing pain. You might buy a vitamin, it's probably not necessarily going to be something you will always do. It'll be the proactive people that will buy into that. And we want to make sure that in that opportunity there's clarity and focus. So it's something that we can do to say, hey, this particular initial vertical that we're going to build is concise and it's going to create that value that we can leverage further down the market. So, and this is kind of the most interesting one for me. I love these. So we aim to try and take advantage of the current best tactics. Now, I know number one here says internet, and you're probably all thinking, well, that's obvious, every company runs on the internet. But what do I mean by that? Well, the internet allowed us to do effectively the context of limitless choice from a consumer perspective. You're no longer bound by geographical boundaries in the way that you build businesses. And that was really the value that the internet provided to us. You can build a business that basically covers the entire of the world, and the best current businesses leverage that as a core tactic. The second one is machine learning. Now, again, buzzword, but what do we mean by that? Really we mean the idea of individualized experiences at scale. So you can create something with that, with machine learning or any kind of ontology in that space, that allows you as an individual to have an exceedingly personal experience that we were never really able to do before. And the last one is mobile. Now, again, you're probably thinking, yeah, everyone's got a phone these days, but mobile didn't just enable us to have a thing in our pocket to access the services that we already use. What mobile really did was allow us to have shorter, more frequent interactions with any service. So that interaction that would normally take you a whole day, you can break that up into these tiny little chunks and start using that service. And it can completely change the context of the way that those services actually work. So we look to say, can we actually find an opportunity in these three spaces with those investments that we're making? So there's two kind of key ways to look at investing. I'm sure most of you guys already know all of this, but I'm just going to summarize it. So there's obviously sustaining innovation or disruptive innovation. And the best way to think about this is if you look at the PC industry. So the PC industry, you had things like CPUs, you had GPUs, things that furthered the sustaining of that ecosystem. So a CPU would mean that you could do something faster on the computer, or a GPU maybe meant that you could push more graphics through your computer. But it didn't change the nature of that particular business. Now, if we look at disruptive innovation there, that would be mobile. So mobile itself came along and started carving out chunks of what the existing PC industry used to do. Now, those mobile devices themselves were substantially lower powered, they were less powerful, it didn't match the same level of technical excellence that you had in the PC market. So, and it's harder to create these disruptive innovations, but of course, because we don't like things to be easy, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And that's why we position these three tactics in that way. So, with that sort of preamble over, I'm going to introduce you guys to the first product that we've been putting together with Tom Jenkins, who's actually going to be doing a talk straight after me, who's our first entrepreneur to go through this program, and I couldn't be more excited. I don't know why I'm getting to announce this actually, Tom, you should probably be doing this, but, so let me introduce you guys to Gula. With everything in mind, hopefully you'll get to see kind of why we've sort of summarized the structure that we have and how it's created the value in this space. So, Gula exists in the pet healthcare space, and we were lucky enough to meet Tom, who's previously built one of the world's finest groups of veterinary practice and services. And he brings a level of credence to this approach in terms of his unreasonable passion about that particular industry that we would never be able to get otherwise. If we look at the pet care market, just going back to our original structure, globally it's around 103.5 billion. It's grown 4.7% since 2015. 20 million cats and dogs in the UK, and the vet spend is up 3.4% despite GDP falling 2.4%. So that's a super resilient market, which is awesome. This is a great place for us to enter. Now, what are we trying to do here? Well, when we were sort of exploring what the kind of existing pet healthcare market looked like, we realized there was this sort of somewhat naive journey that you would go through, right? So as a user, when you're trying to get your pet to be healthy, you might start out from this perspective of curiosity, of like, I'm genuinely curious about the healthcare of my pet. You would maybe notice an issue with your particular animal. So like, it's thrown up in the morning, it's coughing, it's maybe got a particular skin illness. There's a critical issue where you suddenly realize, wow, okay, I definitely need to be a vet. There is something desperately wrong with my animal, all the way through to the fact that your problem has then been solved and your animal is now healthy. So really, if you map veterinary services kind of over this, it sort of exists in this sort of very biased rear end. And there's kind of three things that we found that cause this. One of them is the amount of effort that's required to go and actually use veterinary healthcare services, the cost of using those services, but then thirdly also the stress on the pet, which is what pushes it this way, right? Rather than it necessarily being something that's much further down here. So imagine you wake up in the morning, you notice your cat's been sick on the floor, you think, oh crap, I'm supposed to be going to work in 5 minutes, what am I going to do? Well, I'll probably go to work, and I wouldn't necessarily look after my cat. I might Google it on my way to work, but I wouldn't necessarily go straight to the vet. So there's a gap in that space below it. And so where we see Gula sort of fitting in here is the concept of the product is the first mobile first veterinary service. Now that limits the depth of the service that we can provide here, but it changes that story. So we're lowering the cost, we're lowering the depth of the outcome, and we're lowering the stress on the pet, and we're drastically lowering the effort that's required for you to engage with this particular type of service. So you end up, let me tell you the story again. So instead of getting up in the morning, cat's been sick on the floor, and me having to be concerned and going to work, what I do now is I get up in the morning, the cat's been sick on the floor, I immediately press a button and I have a consultation with a vet that solves the problem for me then and there, and it gives me that sense of certainty. So as you can see, that lowers this barrier to entry significantly. Doesn't go as deep. So that is Gula. That is timely, stress-free video consultations with a vet. And this is the first vertical that we're going to target. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we want to do after this as well. But connecting pet owners with vets whenever they need it and help keep pets calm and comfortable. You jump on a video call and get advice from a vet without the need to travel and wait. So sure, we can't give your vet direct medical attention, but we can give you everything that you would need before that and up until that point. And that's really the goal of where this product sort of makes a difference. So yeah, you wake up in the morning, your cat's been sick again, you hit the chat now button and you have your problem solved. So what does that actually look like? Well, here's the first demo of the product. We've been building this over the last few weeks. This was a very early prototype. This works. I've loaded the app, I've hit the button, my cat, poor Tiddles has been sick on the floor. My payment's been successful, and now we're just waiting for our veterinary professional to join the call. This is, and there he is. No, that's me. And here we go. We're now having a consultation directly with a vet. This is actually one of our team members. This isn't a real veterinary professional, but this is a version of it. So yeah, poor Tiddles is unwell. We're getting a bit of consultation, and there we go. Thanks for calling. How was that experience? Excellent. Tiddles is feeling better already. So there you go. That's Gula. So that's the first look at the MVP. But where are we actually intending to go with this? Like, what does the sort of end result of this really look like? Well, we have essentially a desire to be able to disaggregate the existing veterinary services to provide more timely, more effective, and more direct triaging of the health service back to the consumer. So that you would go to Gula, you would immediately be able to connect directly to a vet, get the best advice, and be put directly to any of the individuals who can specialize in solving that particular problem in a much more concrete way. So I'm just going to mute that. And if we go back to that original graph, this is where we eventually want to be. We want to combine the existing strength of all of the existing healthcare that exists out there with the opportunity space of broadening out that service using the three tactics that we described earlier. So I hope that all makes sense. And that was Gula. Apparently that's ended the presentation. Cool. And that's Gula. Thank you. Now I'm going to just do one last awkward slide so you don't have to feel obliged to clap again. But that's also YLD Labs. And the thing I'm super proud of with Gula is we've actually managed to get a total addressable pipeline of around 3,000 veterinary clinics to potentially use this particular product. We've got 100 practice locations around the UK that have already said, hey, we really want to use this. So that's, in just a few months, I would say, pretty good going. And that's a little introduction to what we're doing at YLD Labs.